Okay, today is going to be a real quick one. It's going to be about the U.S. and China. There's this ongoing conflict. It's a trade war, but we also see a lot of confrontation in cyberspace, I guess you could say. And this is from the Wall Street Journal. And even though it's behind a paywall, I think there's enough of it visible to kind of get the picture of what's going on here. Trump issues new ban on Alipay and other Chinese apps. President said the apps can access private information from their users, which could be used by the Chinese government. And the US would know best because US tech companies, apps, and services all do this both to US citizens and to people all around the world using these apps and services. So the US is acutely aware of this threat because before this, they were the primary threat. And part of their concern is that it could be used by the Chinese government to track the locations of federal employees and contractors and build dossiers of personal information. Okay, fair enough. That's true. And I guess that's part of the reason why China uh, either restricts or bans US applications and services. So I guess one good turn deserves another. But what I see here is a needless confrontation. This is the 21st century. This is the year 2021. And I think that it's time for people to recognize information space as being as important as physical space. Now, every nation has their borders, a defined airspace, their shores, and how far out beyond their shores their claims are. This is all defined by international law and, within the concept of international norms. But what about information space? That's why we have companies like Facebook and Twitter here in Thailand, and they just operate with impunity. They refuse to follow Thai laws when they're operating in Thailand, and it just seems like a loose end basically, where this hasn't been defined, and companies and even governments are taking advantage of this loose or non-existent definition of information space and how much sovereignty a country has over their own information space. So what we see happening here is the US and China both tightening down on how they define and defend their information space. I think they're setting a precedent for other countries to follow. So the US here doing these things to China, trying to depict China as a repressive society for not allowing Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, but then turning around and doing the exact same thing to Chinese applications and services. They're kind of making China's point for China that some of these foreign services could be dangerous and shouldn't be allowed to operate within their borders. Now, when I talk about information space, I'm not talking about let's make because there's a video here and it's talking about the splinter net and how there will be like this restricted flow of information around the world and how the internet will kind of change because of it. It really doesn't mean that though, because it's just like physical businesses today. They can operate in other countries. You're allowed to do that, but when you're in that country, you have to follow their laws. You can't just do what you want. You can't build an Apple factory in China but pretend you're still in California. It doesn't work that way. And as long as you're willing to follow the laws and regulations and norms in China, you can open your factory there and do business. Same goes for Twitter and Facebook. If they want to operate in Thailand, they have to, abide by Thai laws. And they don't get to pick and choose which laws they follow and, threaten the Thai government to sue them. Sue them in what court? What Thai court is going to take a case from Twitter or Facebook against the Thai government? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that that's even something that they tried to seriously talk about doing. But what might be hopeful, we're seeing this chaos right here. What might be hopeful is if this does trigger constructive dialogue, at least between other nations, about what is information space. And at the very least, the US turning around and then shutting itself off from China after accusing China of being repressive for shutting itself down from US apps and services that we know are linked to the US government and are being used as political weapons. We know that for a fact. it kind of sets a precedent for other countries to start, thinking about seriously protecting their information space. So if the US can shut China out, maybe Thailand can start getting a little tougher on Twitter and Facebook operating here in Thailand, just for an example. And one more thing before I wrap this up. We're seeing this happening in cyberspace about information space. There's another frontier that's starting to really open up, and it's going to be something that I talk a lot more about in 2021, and that's actual space, orbit around the Earth and beyond. And we're going to see the exact same thing happen where they have treaties, some things are defined just like with information space, and there are laws that we try to apply. But once, China and the US and Russia and Europe and all these private companies start getting up into space and a real economy starts taking shape in orbit above Earth and beyond, there's going to be a lot of things that we couldn't foresee. And we're going to have this exact same sort of free for all. And it might be dangerous at first before people sit down and start having constructive dialogue and start sorting this out. It's interesting. This is going to be an interesting time that we go through, um, and could be chaotic and possibly dangerous. So we have to keep a close eye on this. This right here that's playing out. This is about information space finally coming of age to where it's as important as physical space, and countries are really getting serious about defending it. And we see the US and China and Russia really getting serious about this. And I think we're going to see other countries, medium and smaller countries following suit here very soon. And if they haven't thought about doing it yet, they need to seriously start doing it, because this is not a problem that's going to go away. This is a problem that's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets solved. And the same goes for in orbit over the Earth. And whatever other frontiers end up getting opened as technology continues to advance. So I think I've gone on long enough. To my patrons that make these videos possible every day, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate the support and the feedback. If you're watching this when I publish it publicly, please like and share it if you thought it was useful. Think about subscribing to my channel. It helps the channel grow. It's totally free to do, and I appreciate that as well. And to everyone everywhere doing anything at all to help support my work, whether you're liking and sharing, doing translations, doing subtitles, or even if you're just sending kind words to me by comments or by email, thank you so much. I couldn't do it without my audience. And as always, thank you for watching.